What did you think of New Zealand? Because a lot of people who've been
Sheep,
there,
a lot of sheep.
a lot of sheep. You've got to like sheep. It is a statement, isn't it? But what did you think of the country?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Down in the South Island, it reminded me very much of Scotland. And I mean, you've got every climatic condition there. You know, if you go to the north, it's like subtropical, and then right down. I've actually been to a place called Invercargill, and after that is Stewart Island, and then it's the Antarctic. And I played there, you know. So, and I'm a vegetarian now, but in those days, I used to eat, you know, meat and fish and stuff, and they have these now over in Britain. To have an oyster is still quite a luxury, but there they have these bluff oysters, which are about the size of your hand, and they do them in batter, and how wonderful, these bluff oysters. In fact, it's almost worth turning non-vegetarian to go for these oysters again.
What made you turn vegetarian? Was it something that happened in your life and you thought, I'm going to make a new path?
I used to be on Top of the Pops. In fact, we had a bed moved into
Yes.
the BBC there, and I was on it probably from 72 to 74, I think, nearly every week. And I had a weight problem. I didn't really have a weight problem, but everybody used to think that you had to be sort of, if you looked around, you'd got Mick Jagger, David Bowie, everybody was, you know, skinny, and, you know, I mean, I'm built like a truck driver, you know, I'm not at all a skinny person, even though I managed to keep my weight down now as a result of being a vegetarian.
I thought you looked quite slim, actually.
I am, because I'm a vegetarian now. I've cut out all the fat. David Essex said to me, we'd just been to see Spinal Tap in New York. I bumped into him, he was in there. And I said to him, how do you keep your weight off? Because you're a fatty like me. I remember when we used to work round in the clubs, you know, little chubby chops. Yeah. And he said, he said, I always cut all the fat off the meat and everything. Well, I tried that, and I like cooking, and I know you can't cook meat without. So it started off like that, really. And then I left the meat off, and then I decided I like the vegetables. And I found that I was enjoying that. And then I left the fish off, and now, I mean, I've been a vegetarian now about 15 years. And I've got a theory about this, that in the 50s, you know, if you had a chicken at Christmas time, or you know, you were lucky. Then they brought the fridge freezer in, and everybody went steak mad and meat mad. And you didn't, you know, we used to have meat once a week until the fridge came in, and then suddenly it's, you know, meat. You don't need it. You don't need it. There are lots of lovely things to try as a vegetarian, you know. The only thing I do miss, or have missed, was a smoky type taste like bacon. And if you get a Greek cheese called halloumi and put it under the grill, you get that chewiness that bacon had.
Halloumi,
yeah.
I'm going to write it down.
Right.
It's funny you should say that, because I was working in New York for a while, and the chap was telling me they rebuilt the Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
Now, as you rightly say, it's not been until recently that people have been eating meat on a very regular basis. The same was true in America. Yeah. And of course they built...
Mind you, I've just come back there, and really, they don't cater for the vegetarian there at all, really, do they? Well, they're still great meat eaters, and they're much bigger.
Big people.
They are big. They're big. They are very big people.
Yeah. Well, they rebuilt the Dodger Stadium because they had so many seats in it in the 20s when they put it up originally. But people had grown, so they had to put bigger seats in. They've lost thousands of seats.
Really?
Yeah, because the people have got bigger. So that really underlines what you're saying, that they've been eating a lot of meat, and people are just putting on so much
that's
size.
why they get heart disease and all the bit. You don't need that much. I mean, you haven't got to be vegetarian if you don't want to be, but I don't think you need that much meat, you know.
But you look very fit.
Listen, I go running every day if I can. I haven't today because I'm in London, but when I'm at home in the country, I call country home. Isn't it funny? Even though I've got a home here in London, and I go running. Probably that's why it's home, because I love running through the lanes and everything. To do 3 hours on stage, you've got to be fit. You know,
people don't realise that, do they? Because I mean, I used to play in a band, and staying up there for 4 or 5 hours, and those tours that maybe you and I used to go and see with Billy Fury and things like that. They used to there's the same band used to be on stage the whole set.
All through everybody.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So it really was a tough life.
Yeah, yeah.
It really was. And you broke your back teeth, didn't you, on that sort of circuit
Yeah,
work?
yeah. I mean, but you see, and another great place that I played that was wonderful was the Star Club in Hamburg, because we went over there because at that time it was what was it, 1960, about 1964. I'd been working for Ready Steady Go. The only time I'd ever got a proper job really was doing the crowd audience participation thing for Ready Steady Go, and then you couldn't get any work unless you spoke with a northern accent, like, you know. Everybody either imitated the Beatles or were the Beatles, you know. And so we went to the Star Club in Hamburg, and there you'd go on stage at 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock, then not again until, I don't know, 10 till 11, then 1 till 2, and then 3 till 5. I mean, we would go on 7 times a night, you know, till 7 in the morning. And it was a different crowd. You used to get the kids in till about 10 o'clock, then they had to go home. Then you'd get the student crowd in, and then you'd get all the people who worked on the Reeperbahn, you know, the people of the night. And we used to do exactly the same songs because we'd only rehearsed up enough. And it was quite interesting because all the generations went for the same material, which
That's
is quite...
interesting.
It is very interesting.
Because that wouldn't happen now, would it?
Well, it does at my shows, yeah.
Yes,
Because if you look
but you're the
at
difference,
my
aren't you?
audience, my audience are made up of every kind of person that belongs to every kind of club, whether they are skinheads, punks, clergy, bank managers in frocks, you know. I mean, you just name it. And little kids. I am amazed at the audience out there, and I always put the spotlight on them and have a good look. And it goes right across the board.
That's true, actually. You are the only exception. I can't think of
think
somebody else.
there are not too many. I know that.
Maybe a bit of David Essex, you might get a wide range, but maybe not so
I
much.
don't know, because David really appeals a lot to the women. You see, I've always had amazing male following, which has been important. You know, perhaps they're all drummers out there or guitar, I don't know. But we've always had, you know, because women, I love them, but they are fickle when it comes to rock and roll. In some years you have you know, I mean, at the moment they're really with me, and I'm very pleased to have them back, you know. But there was a few years when I'd look out and I used to think, I wonder if there's where the females have gone, because there's not one out there, you know, all males out there. But it's good. It's very healthy when that happens, and I think if you go to a Stones gig or anything, there's always a lot of male audience there. I think that's good.
Yeah, that's true. And the girls used to go and see the Beatles.
Yeah.
That was always that way.
Yeah. They're more for the pin-up. You know, when you become flavour of the month, and they, you know, that the girls go for that. But the boys are much more interested in where the music comes from, because they're the ones who want to play it most of the time anyway.
Sure. Is there a routine for you when you're on tour or when you're doing, you know, one of the big shows at Christmas? Is there a daily routine before you get on stage?
Well, I always go the night before. In other words, once I've done the concert, I go to the next town overnight, because this is years of habit of travelling through the night. All the rest of them, my band and everybody, they all go on their own coach, and they go back to the hotel, and they want to party all night long anyway. I like to go ahead, because once I've done a town, I feel as though I've done it, and I want to get to the next place. I get very excited about it. Also, I want to be the first there. You're not called the leader for nothing, you know. and if there's any kind of problems, I like to know about it. I take great interest in my crew and everybody that works with me. It's a big team effort, I feel. And I usually get up at about midday, having sort of arrived at the next town, maybe about 5 or 6 in the morning. And I go through a series of stretching exercises. I don't run when I'm on tour, because I do enough of that on stage, but I do about an hour's exercise in the morning, or by that time it's afternoon. And I try and get up as gently as possible. And then I'll wander down there and see the crew, and wander around, have a cup of coffee, and chat to everybody, ask them if they're okay. Just, you know, and be there in the town as much as possible. I like to know where I am. I like to have a feel of the place, and just chat to the doorman and stuff like that, you know, and let the day develop from there. Before I go on stage, apparently, I become a bit of a monster. I start rushing around and running about a lot. I get nervous. It's very strange, but I really do. I've been professional now for 33 years, and I still get nervous before I go on. I'm not nervous because of not knowing the words, or I just want always to make every show the best I can possibly give it and do it. So, and I really want to keep that. And as long as I've got that enthusiasm, I won't pack it in. And as long as there's a big audience out there for me.
Do you have any superstitious little things that you must take with you? I mean, some people always have a particular comb or something.
Nobody's allowed to whistle in the dressing room. Everybody, I mean, it's in their contract. If anybody comes near me and they whistle in the dressing room, immediately they have to go out of the dressing room, swear as loud as they can, and knock to come back in. And that breaks the spell. That came about because when I was 14, I think I did Sunderland Empire. And in those days, you used to have a few rock and rollers stuck between a variety act and a comedian top of the bill, that kind of thing. And there was this guy that had been in show business, I think, for about, he was about 70 years of age. And he'd got great big long fingernails, I'll never forget. And I walked in the dressing room and I didn't really need any makeup, just a bit of pan stick makeup, so because the lights are bright. And he'd got like the whole of one wall of makeup, and he'd got a bed in there, an ironing board. It was a real old pro, he'd been around for a long time. And I whistled in the dressing room. I tell you, those fingernails came at me, straight to me, And he said, the show will get closed tonight as a result of that superstition. And I didn't believe it, but it's true. The show closed that night, so I'm very superstitious about that. Yeah. Apart from that, I've got my own team. I have a massage for an hour because you need to kind of be as relaxed as possible. Also, I tell you the truth, I'm not as young as I look. And my muscles ache quite a lot from the night before. Because when your adrenaline's going, you think you're Superman. I mean, you can run around and do things that you would never do normally. I mean, somebody said to me, how do you do that for 3 hours? I said, well, I don't know. It's just I walk out there and I get such a rush of energy from the audience because they all want it to work. They want to have a great night out. And I want it to work. So, but I ache the next day. It's like I've done, I played football against, the best team all by myself. That's how it feels. Ache everywhere.
It's strange you talk about that rush because I always got the impression from watching the show and seeing you being interviewed that there's a tremendous inner drive inside you, and there have been times which we've all read about in the press when it hasn't gone so well, when someone's disadvantaged you financially or whatever, but there's always been this ability to come straight back. You might have to take a couple of breaths first, but you're there, and there's this energy thing. Do you feel this?
I'm very lucky. I've got a lot of energy anyway. In the past, when I went bankrupt, I also turned to drink and drugs, which is, to anybody listening, I'm sure everybody likes to drink and maybe even dabbles in drugs. But really, I've gone through all of that, and I don't mind saying it because I've got friends like Keith Moon, Mark Bolan, people that have died as a result of it. I'm lucky here to tell the tale, so I'm just saying it anyway without sounding like a preacher, that, if you go running, you get a better high. And at the end of the day, it's a much better way to live. I've found that the public have always been really great with me, and that is what sustained me. Whenever I felt down, the general public have been really good. They've always tried to support me and help me through it, and I can't thank them enough. Really, there's no words except that's probably why I'm still doing all the shows and doing everything. I mean, they're still there.
There's a lot of affection, a tremendous.
And it's a great deal of affection, and it's such a privilege. It is a great privilege to be in our business and do the things that you're allowed to do, and to sing love songs. I mean, rock and roll and to sing love songs for a living is the best thing on earth. So I try and remember that. I try and remember how lucky I am. And I think the public realise that, and they kind of give me a break. It's good.
I was doing a film session once for BBC Man Alive. They did a programme called To Catch a Fox, and it was basically about the fox hunting circuit and the parties. And it was the time of I Didn't Know I Loved You Till I Saw You Rock and Roll.
Oh, yeah.
So they said, well, we want to film a discotheque sequence at a Hunt ball. So we all went down there, put all the stuff in, you know, and playing the records, and they went bananas to this particular track. And all these girls were dancing, and of course one wanted to outdo the other. I shall say no more. But that track, we must have played it almost an hour, because the film crew wanted
That's
to do
great.
everybody.
That's great.
And it was very odd, because after a while, we had 2 copies of it, we just went from one to the other. After a while, it takes on, it has the quality almost of a mantra effect, you know, that the drumming
Well,
thing.
yes, that was very much in our mind, that we wanted to be hypnotic in that. I think it was it was pre the disco thing, where you couldn't be quite as free like you were in the swing days. We started to get onto the stomp, and so the stomp had a very definite kind of, you know, which the kids today, of course, take for granted, because all the music is similar to that. But yeah, I mean, those chants, we spent hours. I remember doing we wrote Leader of the Gang very quickly. You know, do you want to be in my gang? That came quite quick. But the Come On bit, we spent, I think, nearly 24 hours trying to write Come On the right way to get the chanting thing about it. And in fact, I mean, I chant every day anyway. I'm a Buddhist, so I do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, and I find it really helps give me a great deal of peace and sense of well-being. And I suppose that's always been there in the music.
Yeah, so I didn't get that wrong.
No, you've got it. You've been spot on. Actually, you know, I mean, there are very few people who've spotted that, but it's there, very much there. Yeah.
That idea of the heartbeat that you use.
Oh yeah, you really have been doing.
No. I mean,
some research.
I saw the gigs, and there was this the heartbeat just
Yeah.
coming through on the PA system, and I always thought that was great, because then it was picked up with the band, and that's the one thing in recent times, about 20 years on, we find people talking about rock and roll and saying, well, wouldn't it be great if people played instruments rather than could press buttons, because it's organic.
Yeah.
And that's really my way of saying to you, do you still believe it's organic? Obviously you do,
I
because you
do.
live that style.
I do, yeah.
But the heartbeat, which is at the
Yeah.
back of it all,
Yeah, well, a heartbeat. I mean, was my heartbeat originally? We just
It was yours.
taped it, yeah, and then sometimes we speed it up depending on which track we want to go with. But yeah, I mean, I just and strangely enough, I've reintroduced it for the next bunch of concerts that we're doing. That we're actually going to open with the heartbeat again. At Christmas time, we often come on with the 1812 Overture. But I've reintroduced the heartbeat for the summer festivals, and yeah, I don't know how it came about. Really, it was just one of those things that it seemed like an obvious thing to do. It's like my heartbeat is beating like mad backstage before I go on, and it just felt like I wanted to share it with everybody.
yeah, it's great sound, because it really, yes, yeah, terrific.
It's so natural, really.
Yeah. If you could picture yourself as a musician in another time, is there a period that would appeal to you?
No, you know, even though I started when I was 14, I made my first record for Decca when I was 14. I didn't get the breaks until I started writing my own music with Mike, and it was Mike that drew that out of me anyway. Even though I made a lot of records with various different companies, I missed that 60s thing, and it wasn't till the 70s. Perhaps the 50s would have been really quite the end of it. I would like to have been, you know, I mean, but then I actually did start singing then. I mean, Eddie Cochran taught me how to play What I Say on the guitar in the Two Eyes Coffee Bar. I mean, things like that. I had all that kind of education as well as, so I brought a lot of that with me to the 70s. No, I still think that some of my best work is yet to come. I missed out a lot in the 80s, primarily through financial things. I think the 90s are going to be incredible for us. I really do believe that there's some great work to come yet. A different kind of glitter, but it's coming.
The interesting thing about your career, and it's always been there, people have always played the records, sometimes not as often as others, you know, but
No,
they've
that's
always
right.
been there. what do you think to the idea of sometimes you're forced out of what you're doing so that you can evaluate it
Yeah.
and think
Yeah.
another path?
Yeah, I think it's important. Like, also, if you're always flavour of the month and you're always stuck on top of the pedal, and everybody's saying yes, yes, yes to you, you kind of you can start to believe that you can't do anything wrong. And in a way that's good because it allows you to do some really good work. But on the other hand, you can then take a wrong path. So it's good. It's very good to stand back and look at it and see what you're doing and see if you can find new ways. And never, never, never take your audience for granted. I mean, the fact that you've got an audience is wonderful because, just to sing in your front room with the tennis racket tied round your neck with pretending that it's a guitar and a mirror ain't quite enough. You need an audience out there.
What about when you were talking about North America, Canada, and the ice hockey and things like that? They released that record, didn't they?
Yeah.
Called it the Hay Song.
They
Rock
call
and
it the
roll.
Hay Song, yeah.
But I mean, watching all that and realising that they've snatched something.
Yeah, but you know what I love about it, and I'm sure this is what you were going to say, and I've jumped in here, is a new generation has picked up on it who know nothing about me, really, and they've picked up out of the groove of the record, and that is what's so satisfying, so wonderful, that it's the actual record that's speaking for itself all over again. So it's like 20 years on, and that album, the original album, or original greatest hits with Rock and Roll, Leader of the Gang, all the Didn't Know I Loved You, which we mentioned earlier, Hello, I'm Back Again, I Love You, Love, all that is all being picked up again by a new generation of people. And it's what I've always believed in, that the music is more powerful than the image. It's there, it's in the groove of the record. I remember my son coming to me one day as a kid when he was, about 11 years of age, and he said, "Hey, Dad," he said, "I've got two great records here." He said, "Listen to this." One was Rock Around the Clock, and the other was Hound Dog by Elvis. He said, "You never heard anything like this before." And I thought, what? You're kidding. I grew up with this. I discovered it exactly the same age as you have. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And if you can do that, it's so thrilling. And I'm so thrilled that there's maybe 3 generations on are actually getting into our music.
Yeah. No, it's just something to be very proud of. I always meant to find out about the Star guitar that was in the Glitter Band. Now, what was the story behind that? Because it looked so good, because you were using it on that gig when you used the first staircase.
Yeah, I think it was primarily made for the live performances, and I think a guitar maker made it and offered it to us to use, and then Jerry, who was with the Glitter Band, who always played it, and there's only 2 people who can play that style, or 3 people. Mike Leander, who developed the style to begin with, and showed Jerry how to do it, and Jerry and Mark Pearson, who works with me now in my band, and they're the only people that I know that actually can play the guitar that way and play those parts that way. And the Star guitar Jerry's got, even though it doesn't belong to him, it belongs to me, but he seems to have got it, and maybe one day he'll give it me back.
That was interesting. It was given to you.
It was given to me, yeah.
Because that whole set, I remember, it fitted together so well. And it looked good.
Well, we thought we wanted it to be a bit spacey as well, that kind of. That's right, actually, early on. That Star guitar is a very famous guitar,
Yeah.
I must agree.
Now, when I said to you about Judge Dredd earlier,
Yeah.
I think you might have misunderstood, because I was implying that Judge Dredd might have been inspired out of Gary Glitter.
No, I got your point, and
Yeah.
I was thrilled that you should say that. I think it's a question of timing. That things come together in such a way. I mean, some people call me that sometimes the king of glam and everything. I don't believe that. I think that Mark Bolan was undoubtedly a year ahead on that side of things. But I just took the glitter side that little bit further at that point. And then I was much tougher and had a much, much more boyish attitude than the others did, I think, and so there was more. I was still more like a rocker or a football crowd type attitude, as opposed to Mark, who was a lot more sort of floaty and scarves and gentle, and he's quite poetic actually. And the same with Bolan, even though we all shared the same office, which was extraordinary. But I think that's what happens. You know, people used to talk about who had the long hair first. Was it the Beatles or was it the Stones? And in fact, I think one grows from the other. You know, and if you're on a scene together, you mix with the same musicians, the same people all trying to break at the same time, and you all start. And it was just one of those moments in history that we all came together at the same time, and we were all feeding off each other, and it was very creative. I think again, Judge Dredd, and all that all came about, I think, as a result of that time.
Yeah. So you influenced a lot of people.
I
mean, people who, as you said, like we are of an age, and we're the rock and roll generation that's moved in and sitting here, you know, in the media, maybe in banking. I think a bank manager might have danced to rock and roll once.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's encouraging, though, isn't it? Because prior to that, our forefathers didn't have that. I mean, they really didn't have it. Yeah. So it's good, you know, that you can actually talk. I mean, we all talk music in a much different way than I can't talk to an older generation about music in the same way, because it wasn't available like it is 24 hours a day. I mean, we're so lucky we have music 24 hours a day. You can tune a station and have it. We never had that. If we had an hour of Luxembourg, we were very lucky. And that used to swim in an hour,
absolutely,
in the wrong area.
That really sort of begs the question, if we hadn't have been on short rations, do you think we'd have been
as
more creative,
hungry and as thirsty for it?
Yeah, or do you think really it was
Probably
our saviour, the fact that we were given short rations and we did a lot with what we had?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Remember those days sitting, listening to Radio Luxembourg very late at night?
Yeah. And under the covers.
That's right.
You ever seen Naughty, you see? That was the other great thing, because you were always told that you weren't allowed to, you know, and shut up that rubbish and everything, because it was quite alien. I mean, to anything that would have been out before. I mean, it was raw. It wasn't, you know, that most of the older generation at that time didn't even consider it to be music.
Now, you've spent a bit of time in Scandinavia. I get the impression that they had even access to less access than we had.
Actually, the very first time I went to Scandinavia was, and I was thinking about this yesterday, was I went to, and I was 14 years of age, and I had a group called The Strangers from Southampton backing me. And we went, and I did my first tour, and it actually, the heading was Paul Raven, because that was my name before Gary Glitter. Paul Raven, Luxembourg recording star, on the posters, and there was a guy called Pierre Gramberg, who was their equivalent of Cliff, perhaps Cliff and Elvis, and there was Lil Anita, who was, I don't know, a bit like Connie Francis, I guess. And then in the 70s, I think I played in Helsinki to more people than I did in England at that time. I mean, I remember playing to a concert that had 4,000 people. 4,000 people is not a lot now, but in the 70s it was.
Sure.
I remember talking to David Bowie once, and we were backstage in Australia, and I said, you know, how's things going? What's happening? And he said, you know, isn't it strange? He said, when we were really big in the States, we weren't happening in Europe, and then when we were big in Europe, we weren't happening in the States. And in those days, it was pre-video time, and so you couldn't cover all those territories. And we literally had to cover every territory that we possibly could and do everything live. There was no videos. And so it's changed. Things have changed as a result of the video.
That's absolutely right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I'd forgotten about that. You get used to technology so quickly, don't you?
Yeah, people take it. So, I mean, you know, you could be on MTV or whatever and you're flashed across the world with your latest single. But sometimes you'd get to one country and the last single hadn't come out yet, and you were still... So you kept working, there was sort of like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back all the time. And it was quite strange, really, during the 70s.
Did they ever say to you, don't do the new single if it hadn't have been released?
Yeah, many times. Were
you ever tempted? I suppose you
couldn't,
could you?
You try to just keep people informed with what you were doing. I mean, Hello, I'm Back Again was written as a result of coming back from Australia, and people say to me, "How did you write that title?" I said, I said, "Well, hello, I'm back again." And it was just like coming back into the country. And Mike said, "Well, what should we need to write a new record." I said, "Well, hello, I'm back again."
Great.
That'll do.
Well, that's been true for a long time. We don't want you to go away. You've been interviewed by a lot of people, and that's great. Can I ask you the one question you hate being asked?
Why did you change your name to Gary Glitter?